Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your DFS preview for this week's US Open. Greg DuCharme joining me as he does every single week to break it all down. Greg, it's here. It's time, my friend.
I can't believe it. Our second major of 2020. What a tournament this is going to be. I'm so excited. I'm so much more excited for this one than even a normal major, which is really saying something. So here we go.
And if you are watching on YouTube, you're getting a glimpse of Greg in his natural habitat. Look at you, big dog, on the set of Course Record, just loving life, looking good.
This is where I'm very fortunate to be able to spend just about every workday. So this is my office, one of my offices, and happy to be in here today.
Love it. First Cut Pod on YouTube. Make sure to give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram at First Cut Pod over there. And Greg, I mean, it's a US Open week. The conversation is naturally, especially at this point of the week, going to be almost singularly focused on the course. And that course this week is Winged Foot, one that we are lucky to have you here for because you have an intimate knowledge of it. You can provide a lot of really great insight, but just as far as the numbers go, par 70, 7,400 yards. It has that POA bent hybrid mix according to the GCSAA. But let's talk about difficulty, right? And we were kind of talking about this before we went live, Greg, and this is really tough. And it's very tough for guys like me who I want, a dozen years worth of data at the same course to see where what types of players find success, but we don't have that. So we're relying on a lot of information from guys like you to try to figure out what the heck is going to happen this week.
And there's another challenge to that. And that challenge is exactly what we saw at Harding Park, where in a way the analysts got Harding Park right because you had a guy like Colin Morikawa win, who was a great fairway hitter. Yet at the other on the other end of the spectrum, a lot of the contenders were long hitters. A lot of guys who were missing fairways and still finding success. So you don't really know unless you're out on the golf course. Fortunately, one of the reasons why I'm in here today is because my boss and the host of Course Record is out on the golf course today. So as the week goes on, I will have a lot of insight into the golf course, what it's actually set up like, and we'll get a much more realistic idea of what it's like. But here's what I know now. As for the rough has been the conversation so far.
Yes.
And you're looking at basically 4-inch rough, the primary rough 4.5 inches to start the week. And then in from that a little bit, you have 3-inch rough. And that's basically, you're looking at 7 feet in width on holes 1, 18, and 12. And on 2, 5, 8, 16, and 17. That's where it's 12 feet. So on some holes, you have a little bit more 3-inch rough. And then from there, it goes to 4.5-inch rough to start the week. And it will grow throughout the week. Of course, they're going to cut it once more from now until a little bit later on in the week. But once the tournament starts, they won't anymore. So, and then there is also about a 5 foot 1-inch rough, 5 feet of 1-inch rough, which is an
I thought there was 1 inch of 5 foot rough. That would have been really nice if you found your ball in there.
5 feet of 1-inch rough. And I'm telling you, that's going to be a big deal. That's going to make some of these holes playable if it gets really firm. Because if you have some of these fairways have a reverse camber, similar to if you remember, Rick, the Olympic Club, where these holes will dogleg, say right to left, maybe like 14 at Augusta National, but the tilt of the property is the other way. So it really forces a shot that goes with the curve of the hole. But when you have that 1-inch rough, even if it's just 5 feet of it, if you hit a good shot and it trickles in, you're not trickling into 5-inch rough by Sunday. You're trickling into an intermediate cut, which is a big help.
So really, okay, obviously hitting the short grass is key. If you're just off, that is better than being way off because you're going to get this increasingly thicker, and we've seen the videos on Twitter, Kenny Harm's out there throwing balls in the rough and then having to go stand on top of them to find them. So obviously being in the short grass is key, but if you're going to miss by a little.
Well, it's interesting you say that because here's another inside scoop. There is some cart traffic out there. So we think no spectators, there's not going to be any trampled down areas, but you still have the NBC crews that have to get stuff out there. You still have maintenance crews. There's still a lot of stuff that has to get out on the golf course, and they keep it outside the ropes, which the USGA set the ropes. And once you get outside of there, there is some cart traffic and there are some laid down areas. So kind of like what you get in a normal US Open, there will be an advantage, if you will. I guess you call it an advantage of missing big. So there's definitely an area where you don't want to miss in the deep stuff. That's just inside the ropes.
Just inside the ropes. You'd rather be outside the ropes. That's where I'd hit my ball. Okay, so I guess this culminates, Greg, and I'm going to tie this back into fantasy purposes in a second, but we always talk a lot about what the winning score is going to be. And Justin Thomas is on the record saying, if it plays harder than it did in my practice round, the winning score is going to be over par. And usually, as we see any PGA Tour event, but especially major championships, as they go on, it gets more difficult every single day. So with all the information that we have, and, give us a break. We're recording this, Monday afternoon on the East Coast. What do you think the winning score looks like come Sunday afternoon?
This is always the most challenging aspect of this because there's a couple reasons. We know what the rough is going to be, right? They write up a sheet, they print it out. I mean, they are very scripted, very calculated in the length of the grass that they're going to cut. So that's easy to figure out. We know what that means. It's going to be a challenge. There's going to be a lot of chipping out. And guys are going to make decisions, what they put in their bag, all that based on what they know for sure. What you don't know is the firmness of the greens. And the firmness of the greens dictate the difficulty. There's no question about it. They make firm and fast greens make long rough. They make narrow fairways. They make wind. They make every condition you can think of, every possible element that creates difficulty. Firm greens make it that much more difficult. So and conversely, soft greens make it playable. So all of a sudden you get thick rough but soft greens, and now it's not so bad. Now you can attack hole locations, maybe from the rough. Maybe you draw a lie that's just good enough and you're close enough to hit a 9-iron, and all of a sudden you can attack. So if the greens are firm, I think you're looking at very likely the winning score to be probably 2 over par. And I'll clarify. When I say the winning score, that's the score I believe it takes to win by 1. If one player goes and runs away with it, there is a possibility. Because again, Rick, I think there are a number of holes out there that you can make birdie on if you hit good shots. But it's going to take somebody to play near perfect golf to run away if the greens get as firm like I think they will. And they do have sub-air, so they have a little bit of control in firming them up if they want, if you get some rain on Thursday night or Wednesday night or something like that. But I'm thinking probably around 2 over par is your win by 1 score.
I love it. We could spend the course, the design, the not a redesign, what did I call it earlier when Gil Hans did it?
A restoration.
A restoration. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. It's all fascinating. I mean, we could spend an hour talking about this course. I don't even want to call it a track. This beautiful golf course. It's phenomenal. But the reason I think we have to tie this back into fantasy purposes are the worse the winning score. So the higher the winning score is going to impact a lot of things that happen in fantasy. And I'll give you a great example of this, Greg. Olympia Fields, a couple of weeks ago at the BMW Championship, John Rahm won there. He scored 94 DraftKings points. So his finishing position, the 30 points that he got for winning the golf tournament, made up a third of his final DraftKings points. So the worse the winning score and the more bogeys that are made and the less birdies that are made make the finishing position aspect of your score much more important. I don't think we're going to see a lot of guys this week that outpace their finishing position with birdies and eagles because I don't think they're as readily available. So it's going to be really critical to get kind of the leaderboard right, if that makes sense.
I think that's a very good way to be able to analyze it. But I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you think that helps the casual player, the everyday player, or do you think that helps the sharps?
No, I think it helps the casual player because I think in general the casual players trying to get the leaderboard correct, and I think they should be. That's almost always going to be very close to what the ranking of DraftKings scorers is, or fantasy scoring is going to be. But there are usually a handful of guys. We talk about it a lot with Scotty Scheffler. Unfortunately, he's not in the field this week. We talk a lot about it with Tony Finau, guys that are more volatile, guys that are capable of rattling off birdies, getting a birdie streak, making an eagle somewhere. Like that goes a long way in fantasy scoring, and it doesn't go as far on the actual leaderboard. So I think it does help the casuals, Greg.
It's very, very, very interesting because the finishing position, that point distribution, if you will, is locked. It's set. It doesn't matter what you shoot. It doesn't matter if you make zero birdies for the week. You're getting 30 points for that. So, and whereas the accumulation of all the other points can change in a week like this quite drastically.
And then the final thing is, if you don't get all 6 of your golfers through the cut, don't worry. I think you will be with the vast majority of other players this week. So normally on the PGA Tour, we get top 65 and ties through the cut line. For reference, last week at the Safeway, I think 2.5% of the lineups got all 6 out of 6 through. So you could have some really good 5 out of 6 lineups, but we're going to top 60 and ties this week for the US Open. So that number, in theory, especially if a very popular golfer misses the cut, could be like sub 1% of all lineups that get all 6 of their golfers into the weekend, which would be, you might see carnage on the course and you might see carnage in your fantasy lineups as well.
Does that make you, as far as strategy is concerned, does that make you play more aggressive or more conservative? Are you looking to get 6 guys because you know that's going to be a huge advantage? Or are you thinking, I'm going to miss a cut anyway, let's go for guys who have some win equity?
Yeah, I'm probably more on the latter. Like, let's just blow it out, see what happens, because it's going to be so hard to find 6 of 6 anyway with the way that this is starting to shape up. So I don't think it's really changing my strategy, but it will change my perception, Greg, like on Friday evening when I'm like, oh my God, I don't have any lineups that have 6 of 6s through. I still might be in a pretty good position if I have a bunch of 5 out of 6s because what the rest of presumably ownership is going to be and all that stuff.
You're always on the more aggressive side, which I like.
Yeah.
So I think that bodes well. And I think also there's very few safe picks to kind of chime in on my own question. Anybody can go out and miss a cut here. I mean, Tiger Woods in 2006 missed the cut here. And just ask Jim Furyk how good of a year he had from a strokes gain perspective in 06.
Let's jump into this. $10,000 and above. There are 6 golfers priced over $10,000 in the DraftKings player pool, led by the 2 hottest golfers on the face of the earth, Dustin Johnson and Jon Rahm at $11,500 and $11,000 respectively. Then you get a couple of guys who might be underperforming only by their own standards. Justin Thomas at $10,007 and Rory McIlroy at $10,005. And then the bottom of the 10,000 are these young, intriguing options, Greg. It's Xander Schauffele at $10,100 and Colin Morikawa, our most recent major champion, at a flat, even $10,000. All of these guys very much deserving of their price tag. Who is the one or two that moves the needle most for you? Do we have time for all of them?
This is so hard. I look at this, and if you saw in my notes in the rundown, like how do you fade somebody here? They're all great plays.
Yeah.
And if you look, especially at the top 2, and just start there, because I think, Rick, as you mentioned earlier, finishing position is going to be so important. To me, this area of the tournament is even more important this week than it normally is. These really expensive guys. It's very often in big events where, they all look so good, but picking the right guy this week, I think in this group is going to be critical. And I don't know if it's possible to get 2 in there. But you want to make sure that the guy you have up here does really well. Now, that being said, Dustin Johnson is so hard to pick against here. I mean, he's got 5 top 10s in 12 starts. 4 of them, a third of the time in U.S. Opens, he's finished in the top 5. And one of them is a win. And he's playing really, really good golf, tied second at the PGA. He wins the Northern Trust. We all remember that. Loses in a playoff to a 66-foot putt from Jon Rahm, and then wins the Tour Championship. The concern with DJ, I guess the knock of him on paper from my analysis, is his scrambling is not quite as good as John Rahm's. So John Rahm is on paper, I think John Rahm's probably the best guy. He's got great course. He's got great course fit to me. And
Yes.
which you talk about all the time. You think about the wins he has this year: Olympia Fields and Muirfield Village, thick rough, firm greens, difficult golf courses with complicated greens that required great short game. And not just great short game, but this isn't like short game like we saw at Shinnecock Hills in 2018, where it's a lot of fairway runoffs. This is thick rough and deep bunkers, and John Rahm's one of the best in the game at that. I mean, he's 11th in scrambling for the year. He's 14th in scrambling from the rough. He's 15th in sand saves and 26th in proximity to hole from the sand. Those numbers are much better than Dustin Johnson. So I think those two players, and I want to get your thoughts, I think they deserve a lot of attention. It's just a matter of which one are you going to choose? Do you lean one way or the other?
I think I do. Obviously, you could convince me either one of these guys is the best player in the field, best player on earth right now. They're 1 and 1A. You're not going to get much argument from me. I do give a lot of weight to the two victories that John Rahm has at Muirfield Village and at Olympia Fields. I think that those are much closer to what we are going to see at Winged Foot this week. I think it takes just a different type. It's a mental grind. It's a physical grind. It's the short game. It's everything that you mentioned, Greg. You have to be a complete player. That's not saying that Dustin Johnson's not a complete player, but he can just go out and boat race you for 30 under par, win by 11 shots, and do it that way and overpower a course. But when you get to a course that's a little bit more difficult to overpower, you get a $500 discount onto John Rahm. I think that is probably the quote unquote better play. Would I be upset if you wanted to start your lineups with Dustin Johnson? Of course not. He's been the best player on the face of the earth for 5 or 6 weeks or whatever it is. But I think when you put all of it together, Rahm makes a bit more sense.
I think I agree with you in that Rahm is the better player on paper for this venue. But Dustin Johnson, he answers all those questions too. He's been great on difficult golf courses. I just have some more questions about him, especially in the deep bunkers. He's an above average bunker player. I think anyway. He's 50th in sand saves on the PGA Tour last year. So he's not a terrible bunker player. I just wonder when you get into these deep bunkers and the level of difficulty increases so much, does John Rahm have an edge there? We'll see. That matchup probably comes down to who drives the ball a little bit better on Thursday and Friday.
And that will probably be one of our matchups in the preview episode that we come out with later in the week that we're going to have to decide on.
Stay tuned to tomorrow. So those guys both interest me. I think you got to choose one. But Rick, this is something that when you look at a tournament like this, I wonder if you play any of this if you take any of this into consideration. You have your general 3 buckets. You have your stats. You have your recent form. You have your course history. But there's a 4th bucket that I always give a little bit of weight to in certain circumstances, and that's other storylines. And when I see Justin Thomas at Winged Foot, I think of Davis Love III winning at the PGA Championship in 1997. I see so many similarities, not just that their fathers are both PGA professionals. And I know this is a U.S. Open and not a PGA Championship. That's a big difference. But you have extremely talented ball strikers who have these golf swings that are very upright, and there's a little bit of towing in them, and they're pretty good out of rough, and they're long hitters, and they have some great short game ability and touch, and I see a parallel there. And I wonder, do you think that has any kind of play? Like, I think the Justin Thomas story would be fascinating.
I think it would be too. So I like talking about JT and Rory here together because I think they both have one thing that gives you an ounce of question. And for Justin Thomas, it's the putter. He's going to go as far as the putter allows him, whether that is good or bad. And we've seen him win a tournament just by, tee to greening it to death at WGC FedEx St. Jude. If he goes out and he gains 2 strokes putting, he probably wins this thing. He's that good from tee to green. He's absolutely phenomenal. He has the pedigree. He has everything. So I'm more optimistic on JT than I might be on Rory, who's one thing that's been holding him back, especially since the restart, is the irons. He just hasn't been hitting his approaches as close as he needs to. Now it's Rory McIlroy. Can he flip a switch? Can he figure it out? If anybody can, it's him. It's just that's usually a skill set that takes a little bit more time to figure itself out than the week to week and day by day volatility of putting. So those are the two guys that I have question marks next to. Much more optimistic in JT's favor than I am probably in Rory's.
I completely agree. I give JT a play for me because I know that he likes the golf course, but I still have some questions. And the questions are not just the putter for me. I think he'll putt okay here this week. I think the question is going to be, how does he drive it? And JT is a player who has admitted himself that he can get the spray gun out, as he said. He can get the spray gun out from time to time. Yeah. So what's the effect going to be when he misses fairways, which he and everybody else will? Where are they going to miss? And when are they going to miss? And is it going to be on the right side? Is it going to be a huge penalty? So that's the question mark for me with JT. And I love his short game. I love all that stuff. I mean, JT's 5th in sand saves, 16th in proximity to the hole from the sand. He's got a lot of makings. I just wonder what's going to happen with the driver. With Rory, I wonder what's going to happen with his short putting. And Rory has a tendency, he can 3-putt sometimes. He's not very good from 4 to 8 feet. 148th on tour from 4 to 8 feet, 83rd in 3-putt avoidance. Those are the areas that really concern me with Rory. And the other thing is his record in U.S. Opens, despite the fact that he won in 2011, it's just not that great. I mean, 11 events, and he has 4 top 10s, which is great. One of them's a win. But he has 5 missed cuts. So he makes the cut and comes in the top 10, or he misses the cut entirely. And a golf course like this, I mean, it can get away from you pretty quickly, and it gives me some pause with Rory.
Yeah, I think he has, since the win, I think he's missed the cut in like half of his starts at the U.S. Open, which is obviously not good, Greg. Not good.
You know, that advantage, almost his advantage of his distance can, in some instances, get limited a little bit by really challenging rough. And it throws it up to chance where what kind of breaks do you get in the rough? And I just have some questions about Rory.
The bottom of the 10K range, I think, is where a lot of people will focus. I think there'll be a lot of attention on Xander, which I think is completely warranted. And then I'm sitting here looking at Colin Morikawa wondering, he's an even $10,000. Maybe I just plug him in. I mean, you got to realize he has answered the bell, Greg, every single time. Every question that we've had about him in his young career, he has answered. Okay, go out and win an alternate field event. Well, can he actually do it on a regular event? Yeah, sure. Go out and win one of those in a playoff against Justin Thomas. Well, can he actually do it at a major championship? Yeah, sure. Go out and win one of those at the PGA Championship at Harding Park. Now, obviously going back-to-back at major championships would be unbelievable, but he's already done the first half, right? I mean, he's sitting here at $10,000 for a guy that we know is going to find the short grass a lot. And when he does, he turns into maybe the best player, maybe the top 3 player on earth. I mean, especially when you put an iron in his hand, a wedge in his hand. I'm obviously getting more concerned the closer he gets to the green and how difficult those conditions can be. But I'm thinking, am I just overlooking him if I don't just plug him into a bunch of lineups?
I don't think so. Part of this is he falls into a difficult price category.
Yeah, it's a really awkward price, actually.
Yeah, because you know how important finishing position is, and if you play Colin Morikawa, you're basically saying there may be a way to get around this, but you're going to have to take some chances. You're basically saying Dustin Johnson and Jon Rahm are not going to have, and probably Justin Thomas, they're not going to have as good a week as Colin Morikawa. Now, I think that's a big statement with the concerns of Colin Morikawa being his short game and his putting. I am completely with you. He hits a ton of fairways, but a ton of fairways is 65% of them. So on those 35% of the fairways that you miss, what are you able to do? And it's gonna put pressure on everybody's short game. And that's where the concerns come up with Morikawa. It's with the short game and it's with the putting, and the putting has been improved. There's no question about it. But what happens with the short game? And I'm just not sure it's as sharp as a player like Jon Rahm or a player like Justin Thomas. I don't know where his creativity is around the greens yet. Could he prove me wrong? Of course he could. Yeah. But the PGA Championship was a different experience. Those greens were very benign. You look at the putt, just watch a highlight reel of Colin Morikawa making putts at the PGA. There's not a lot of break in them. And this week it's going to be entirely different. And, even Workday, Muirfield has hard greens, but they were really soft. for the week of workday, and it kind of played a little different than it did the next week. So yeah, I don't know, Rick. I have some concerns with Morikawa.
What about Xander? I mean, I don't know what more we need to say. I think he has like 8 straight top 25s. He won the Shadow Leaderboard, which is the raw scoring version of the Tour Championship. He has played in 3 U.S. Opens. Oh, by the way, a 5th, a 6th, and a 3rd. Like, I think he's going to be very popular. I think it is warranted. I'm not sure I have much more to say about that. I think he's very fairly priced.
He is. This price drives me nuts because he was my pick back in January. So I have been on Xander at Winged Foot. In fact, I saved Xander in our one and done league for Winged Foot just in case we stretched the season a little bit. I wanted to save Xander. I ended up using him in the Tour Championship.
You ended up winning it and not needing it anyway.
yeah, that's true. We'll add that into the mix. But I loved Xander at Winged Foot the whole time, and I still do. I'm going to try to find a way to get him and another big gun in there. I don't know if it's possible. So, but a lot of my lineups are going to have him. He does everything well. He's 10th from putting from 4 to 8 feet. He's 16th scrambling from the rough. He's 33rd in sand saves. He's 2nd in scrambling overall. So the short game is there. He can definitely move the ball right to left. And maybe Rory's the exception here, but I think he is one of the better drawers of the ball amongst the top players in the world. They pretty much all fade it. And he moves it a little right to left. And I think there are a lot of tee shots where that's going to be an advantage. Like number 9, a long par 5. It's a straight hole, but the fairway tilts to the right. And being able to draw it into that fairway is going to make it easier to hit. 12 is the exact same way. And I think he hits it high enough to handle the holes like number 17 and number 8, which do dogleg to the right. And they, on the surface, ask for a fade, no question. But if there are 2 holes where you're only drawing it, you need height. And I think he can do that. So I look at Xander's game as one of the more complete games on the PGA Tour. The question is, he's not elite in there's nothing where he is the best player in the world.
Is that good though?
Well, he's really good at everything.
What if he's great at everything and elite at nothing?
Yeah, it's a concern. For sure. Like Justin Thomas, I think we've said a lot his game has no holes. I think JT's game does have holes, but it also has places where he's the best he's the best iron player in the world.
Yeah.
So that is a huge advantage. Dustin Johnson, when he's feeling it, is the best driver of the golf ball in the world, I believe. I think Jon Rahm has one of the best short games in the world. And there are weeks where he may be the best driver of the golf ball in the game. And Rory's the exact same way. There are weeks where he's the best in the game. I don't know if Xander has that. But in a U.S. Open like this, I think you're going to have to lean on all parts of your game. And I love his well-roundedness.
Yeah, I agree with you. $9,000 range is kicked off by Bryson DeChambeau. We've got Webb Simpson, Patrick Cantlay, Danny Berger, Straight Vibin, Tony Finau, and Hideki Matsuyama. Greg, I think the winner might be in this tier. So if I tell you that, which one of these guys is most likely to win this golf tournament?
Well, which one do I think is more likely?
Okay, which one do you think I think is the one?
Okay. I have a feeling that you're going to say Bryson.
I'm not going to say Bryson.
Ooh. Okay. Is it?
Go ahead.
Oh, man. I don't know. Now I'm guessing.
I think it's Webb Simpson. So I think.
Okay. I don't hate it.
I think there are. Okay. So usually when we get to venues like this, a lot of guys get written off because they're not long enough. And Webb is usually one of those guys. It's not a Webb course, all that good stuff. I've said this. I've said it countless times on this pod. When they walk off the tee box, Webb Simpson's the best player on the tour. And I'm not even really exaggerating that. If you add up strokes gained approach, around the green, and putting, Webb gains 1.76 strokes per round. It is the most on tour. So I'm not even really exaggerating by saying when they walk off the tee box, he is the best player in the world. Now, he doesn't hit it far, but what he does do is he puts it in the short grass. And I think that is much more important than gaining an extra 25 yards and being in the first cut or being in that step cut or being in whatever of the rough when you get to a major championship venue. I just feel like if he can pound the fairway, and he's going to have to do that. He's going to have to pound fairways. He is like a really great option for this week.
Well, first of all, the first cut is always a great place to be. But
freaking first cut. Golly.
So here's the thing with Webb. If,
Nice.
if Webb hits a lot of fairways, like you say, and accurate, he does. He hits a lot of fairways. Then the golf course is not too long because it's going to be pretty fast, and the ball is going to be rolling. And he's not short. I mean, he's not hitting a 270 off the tee.
Yeah.
If he's in the fairway, he's going to get it to 300 yards, and it's long enough. The problem for a shorter hitter, a relatively shorter hitter on a golf course like this, is when you get in the rough, you have no chance of reaching the green. Where a player like Rory, Bryson, I'd even throw JT in the mix. In many cases, they're going to be able to reach greens from the rough more often. But here's the other thing. Winged Foot is a place where, as we said, the greens are all back to front. They're back to front, and they slope away from the bunkers. So if you have a back to front green with a bunker on the left and a bunker on the right, it's going to be back to front, and the right side's going to tilt into the left. There'll be a slope, and the right side's going to tilt into the right. You're going to see that on number 3. You'll see it on 15. You'll see it on a number of holes out there. That's for drainage of the greens, when the way it was originally designed. So what that means is it's bad to miss left. It's bad to miss right. It's bad to miss long. It's great to miss short.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to be in the rough and not able to reach, I would almost rather have a player not try to reach the green from the rough and miss hole high left or right, or God forbid, past hole high, but come up short, come up 30 yards short. The pitch shot is going to be so much easier. And it's if I was caddying at Winged Foot for an amateur player, I would never let them hit anything more than a 6-iron into a green, because missing left and right makes the golf course so hard. Missing short is not that bad. It slows the greens down. You're always going to have a play. You're very rarely going to make a double bogey, assuming you're not going to miss a putt inside of 5 feet. So I think that can bode well for a Webb Simpson.
You don't have to sell me anymore. I'm in on Weber. We both have a similar fade, or the same fade here, and it is Bryson. And yeah. I have a feeling that you and I are on the same page about why he might struggle around a U.S. Open venue or around Winged Foot. But why is Bryson a fade for you this week?
I think I'm with you that it's going to be kind of similar reasons. You can't overpower this place. No. You have to be you can't be over aggressive. And there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of curve in this golf course. There's not a lot of straight holes. And that means for a player of Bryson's length, the line that he takes is going to be different. And the fairways get even narrower. Even a straight shot for Bryson, the margin for error becomes even smaller because of the angle. So he could hit it dead straight on a line that's, well, let me put it this way. If you have a straight hole, you can hit it as far as you want straight, and you're not going to run out of room.
Right.
If you are hitting to a fairway that's 20 yards wide, 27 yards wide, 23 yards wide, that's a really tight landing area when you're coming in from across it. And it's not that he'll be coming straight across it. He's not going to have 27 yards to stop the ball, but the precision that's required at his length is going to be that much more. And I think that's going to create a frustrating kind of a week for Bryson.
I was a bit more surprised to see that you were not all a big fan of Hideki, who is at even 9,000. I think that the story's very clear on Hideki. He's very on brand. Great ball striker. Great ball striker, cannot putt, which he might get completely exposed at Winged Foot, but he does have a strong short game. You know, he can get. It's so weird, right? He hits these pitch shots to like an unbelievable shot to 4.5 feet, and then he misses the putt every single time. It's so brutal. But well, like I thought that might help. Yeah, exactly. So I was a little surprised to see you not as warm as maybe I am on him this week.
So the concern is the putting on the greens. Yeah. And these are the kind of greens where it can get really spooky if you have doubt. You start to see ghost breaks. You feel like you're going to putt it off every green. And so spooky is really the word to use. So
that's
for somebody who has that doubt, I have worry.
Interesting. Okay, so is there someone else? So we've kind of ruled out, for us personally, probably Bryson. You're worried about Hideki and the ghouls and the ghosts that might appear throughout the week. Anybody in this 9K range you're super stoked about? It leaves us with Cantlay, Berger, Finau that we haven't talked about.
I'm a little interested in Finau, but Berger's a guy that I'm really high on.
Yeah.
I think Daniel Berger's going to have a great week. He's really well-rounded. He has a great short game, and he's hit some extremely impressive bunker shots, which I really like. I think sand play is going to be important, and I think he has all the skills for that. So that's when I'm really looking forward to see what Daniel Berger does, because I think he can hit a lot of fairways, and I think his iron play is really strong. And he's a grinder. He's a tough kid. I think Wingfoot's going to be a good place for him.
Yeah, I dig it. I want to get into the 8K range. We're going to talk a little bit of value, but first we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. Before we jump into the 8K range, we have a question from Apple Podcasts. So if you want to support this podcast, the very easy, best way to do it, go drop a 5-star rating and review and leave a question. We'll answer it. Whatever you want, we'll answer it. Here's one for this week, Greg. And this is from Be Somebody. Be Somebody 4 asks, do you think it's possible to be the opposite of Bryson and be a top 25 player? With all the talk of changing the game for his driving distance, do you think it's possible for a player on tour to have an opposite strategy? And Be Somebody defines this as be first in fairway accuracy but short and be one of the best players on tour. And I think this is your note in here, Greg. And if this is your note in the outline, I completely agree with it.
I don't think it's my note. I think that might be Jacob's.
Might be producer Jacob's note. Then
Yeah.
I agree with producer Jacob.
So let's see. Oh yeah. That's a good note.
The note says, isn't this Brendan Todd? Which, like, yeah, right? Isn't it?
So it's never good to be the shortest player. And this is it possible? I don't like to rule out things as being possible, but I do have some there are some problems. Distance is always an advantage.
Yes.
Leading in fairway accuracy on the PGA Tour is going to be like 75%. And it's not a big enough advantage. So all the data says distance is the king. And if you don't have the distance, like a Brendan Todd or like a Webb Simpson, there's just so much more pressure on the rest of your game. And those areas of your game become the more volatile areas. As you get closer to the hole, consistency becomes more of a challenge. The likelihood of hitting it really far every day is extremely high. Bryson's not going to have a day where his 7-iron just goes 10 yards less, right? Or he may have like 2-mile-an-hour differences in ball speeds day to day, but his distance travels with him everywhere he goes.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for Webb Simpson, his putting prowess can vary course to course, day to day. You're so much more reliant on the conditions, whereas distance is relative and it's always an advantage. So I would say it is possible, but you're talking about probably inside of 1% to be one of the best players. You're looking at a Webb Simpson. That's basically it.
Yeah.
As for top 10 players in the world that are really short.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because the leader in driving accuracy, 74, 75%. If you go down to like 64, 65%, or actually, here's a better example. Brendan Todd hit 71% of his fairways last year. You go down to 61%, that's like 80th on tour. So you're talking about 10% of your fairways. You're talking about maybe 2 fairways around. And that's the advantage, 2 fairways around. And driving distance is not just with the driver, it's the fact that you're hitting wedge in instead of 8-iron. And now you're talking about every single approach shot that you hit on tour, you're a club or 2 shorter. Like you're hitting a pitching wedge of 7, 8-iron. It's not just the fact that you're hitting the fairway, but doing it from 25 yards out. It's like it is everything else in your game. And then I think the final thing is, Greg, not enough PGA Tour courses are penal enough if you miss the fairway.
That's a very good point.
Like 25 times a year, you can miss all the fairways you want and still go out there and contend.
It's a great point. And then when you get to the difficult ones, the advantage even goes up for the player like Bryson. I mean, I think to the 6th hole at TPC Harding Park on Sunday, Tiger has 218 yards in the right rough. And he hits a punch cut 5-wood that he hit a great shot. And it's probably the best he could do. He couldn't land it on the green. He lands it short. It rolls through the green over the back. Mm-hmm. Bryson misses the same hole to the right, into the right rough, has 131 yards, hacks a pitching wedge out. It lands on the middle of the green and stops pretty much right where it is. He's not able to go at the flag there, but but he's able to stop the ball on the green. So the closer you get to the hole, the bigger the greens get, the more likely you're going to hit them, the more chances you have. It just distance multiplies things. It just multiplies advantages.
Yeah. The PGA Tour is not set up for short hitters who hit a lot of fairways to find success. It's just not. Anyway, thanks for the question. Be somebody for. Submit your question. We'll be happy to answer them. $8,000 range, Greg. I won't name them all, but we've got Tommy Fleetwood at $8,900, all the way down to Matthew Fitzpatrick and Victor Hovland at $8. Scotty Scheffler at $8,200 is out. He has withdrawn, tested positive for COVID, unfortunately. So he will not be playing the U.S. Open, which I know for you and I, Greg, he would have been a staple at this point, and he would have been a guy who we would have been talking about at this tier. So without him here, who's our favorite option out of the 8Ks?
Tommy Fleetwood is my favorite, and part of that is his record in U.S. Opens is it's stellar. In 2015, tied 27th. 2017, he came in 4th. In 2018, at Shinnecock, he came in 2nd to Brooks Koepka, tied 65th at Pebble. Pebble's a little bit of a different story. I think it's set up a lot different than what you're going to get this week. So if you look at 18 and 17, where it got really firm and fast, that's more similar to the conditions you'll get this week. This is where Tommy Fleetwood's advantage shines, because you have to hit fairways. But distance is still an advantage, and he's one of the longer, straighter hitters out there on tour, and he can ball strike his way to a great finish. And then you add to that, he's really good in the short game. He's really good out of the sand, which I think will be really important this week. 5th in proximity to hole from the sand this year, which can definitely go a long way.
I think Tommy Fleetwood probably gains the most steam in this tier with the WD from Scotty Scheffler, who I was firmly a believer that Scotty Scheffler was going to be the most popular golfer on the slate with how he was playing at only $8,200. I thought he was going to be the most popular guy. I think now a lot of people are looking for another option. And as our friend Justin Ray tweeted out at the Portugal Masters last week, Tommy Fleetwood was dominant from tee to green. And I think when you put that together with everybody knowing what his U.S. Open record is and what they're looking for somebody in this tier, I think Tommy Fleetwood eats up a lot of those Scotty Scheffler.
And does that concern you? I mean, I guess the concern for me here is he's at 89.
Yeah.
So does that get you deep enough into the range? I don't know, but is it a concern for you?
I don't think so. I haven't built a bunch of lineups yet. So I don't know how it's going to actually impact lineup making, but I'm not too concerned about it, because I still don't think he'll get to, I don't think he'll get to Scotty Scheffler territory. I think there will be plenty of optimism for Adam Scott or Justin Rose, or, I mean, with the bottom of the range. I mean, I think there's other options here, Greg, that, don't let Tommy Fleetwood get to what Scotty Scheffler would have been.
These options for me leave, man, Jason Day and Adam Scott have me conflicted. Jason Day, I know you probably have some great stats on his iron play, which is a big concern. But his record at the U.S. Open is just ridiculous. He has 3 second-place finishes at U.S. Opens. It's a venue that you would think sets up great for him because his short game is so good. His putting is so good. He led the tour last year in strokes gained around the green. The bunker play is phenomenal. All that works, yet the last couple of events, and I mean, he did have a stretch where he was playing great, but before that, it wasn't great. And maybe that hot stretch was an anomaly.
Yeah, it's weird. So here are the iron numbers. I mean, he was bad with his irons from 2019 Open Championship until this year's Workday. Then he had that or maybe a week before that, but then he had that 4 or 5 week stretch where he was great with his irons and improving. He gets, 4 consecutive top 10s. That's where everything was going right. And then he fell off a cliff. I mean, the last 2 starts we saw, a BMW Championship and the Northern Trust, he lost a combined 14 strokes on approach, which is not good. That's not going to get it done at any golf course, let alone at a major championship. So I'm out on J-Day, Greg. I'll take basically anybody else here.
Yeah, I think that's probably a smart move. He just, his success in U.S. Opens just it perks my interest. But I'm with you. I have all the same questions. And Adam Scott leaves me with some questions too. We just haven't seen a lot of him. Yet his game has been kind of trending we all know about his golf swing. I guess his accuracy off the tee may be a little bit of a concern. But I think he can hit fairways when he wants to, when he needs to. And his short game and his putting has really been the strength of his game of late.
Yeah, I mean, for the last decade, he's just been one of the best tee to green players on tour. It is tough because we only saw him 3 times in the restart, but 2 of them were top 25s. I mean, he had a 22nd place finish at the PGA, finished in the top 25 at the BMW. Obviously, 2 of the more difficult courses that he saw, especially in his return. So I don't know. I'm lukewarm on Adam Scott. I don't love it, but I'm warming to it. Just because
Yeah.
he also has 19 top 10s in majors. Like, this guy knows how to get around a major championship.
Yeah, he does, and it just highlights the advantages that he has. So, and look, there's some similarities between Winged Foot and Augusta National in the movement of the holes. They ask for shape off the tee, and a creative mind can do really well. It paints a nice picture for him, and I think that leads to some really solid ball striking from Adam Scott. But you just haven't seen enough of him for me to jump all over him. But I think he's a very good play here.
Should we talk about the cat?
Yeah. You go first.
I hope I'm wrong. I hope on Sunday evening we're talking about Tiger's 16th major, 3 it'll be. I mean, it'd be amazing. I hope that happens. There is no evidence to suggest he's going to have a great week recently, right? I mean, in the 2020 calendar year, he has not hit enough fairways, which is going to put you into a lot of trouble. His putter has been suspect at best, and this is a place where you've got to be on top of it. There is just a little evidence to think he's going to find success this week, other than the fact that his name is Tiger Woods and he has 15 major championships.
Well, if he wins this week, and then by the time he gets to April, you're talking about him going into an April Masters with a chance to tie Jack if he wins this week. But it's not going to happen.
Don't do that.
There is.
I will cry. Well, he'd have to win.
Could you imagine?
This would be what, 16? He'd have to win. How would he get? He would have to win.
Well, if he wins this week, he'd be at 16. If he wins the November Masters,
then November
17.
Masters. We already gave him that one.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
got it.
So he'd have a chance to go 3 in a row at Augusta and tie Jack all at once.
Oh my God.
No, but in all reality, you're looking at a player. If you take his name away from it, which is hard to do because you have to give the name respect, but
yeah,
it's this place is demanding of all areas of the game to be at an elite level. And I don't think there's any area of Tiger's game that's at an elite level, with the exception of maybe his iron play. But you're not going to see that iron play. And in a place like this, when you start missing fairways, it eliminates the importance of iron play. And where Winged Foot on normal day-to-day play, maybe a second shot golf course. This week, I think it's a first shot golf course because the width of the holes has been taken away because the rough is so penal. And once you're in the rough, your iron shot at the green, unless it's probably a wedge, is gone. So you lose a lot of opportunities to allow the strongest area of your game to succeed. And that's a big concern of me with Tiger. He's weak in the areas you need to be strong, and the area where he's strong, I don't think is going to be able to make up for it. So I'm unfortunately predicting a long week for Tiger, but I, like you, hope I'm wrong. This is kind of the life hedge here, right? If we're completely wrong and he contends, we're happy as could be. And I don't care that I didn't play him, but he's not getting into any of my lineups this week.
I'm living at the bottom of this range. Terrell Hatton's 8,100. Matthew Fitzpatrick is 8,000. Hatton won at API, which was statistically the most difficult golf course on the PGA Tour last season. We know he's a grinder. His ball striking numbers have been great in the last couple of weeks. And then Matthew Fitzpatrick, Greg, you know me, he's like the opposite guy. He's the opposite guy that I normally want to play because he does a lot of it with his flat stick. But there comes a time where I stop caring how you do it and start realizing that he just keeps doing it. I mean, he found success at, my God, I mean, he played well at Muirfield Village. He played well at Olympia Fields. I mean, it's like even these difficult courses, he finds a way to find himself on the first page of the leaderboard. I'm starting to stop caring about how it's done.
I like Fitzpatrick a little more than Hatton this week on paper. And part of that is what he said before. And you look at him and he said, I really like it when it's firm and fast and it demands creativity. And that's exactly what Winged Foot does. So I think Matthew Fitzpatrick is going to love this golf course when he gets there. He has played a practice round. A buddy of mine played 9 holes with him, who works over there, and said it was a stripe show. Now, look, when you're a golf professional like I am, and you play with a PGA Tour pro, you're going to say it looks really good. I mean, it has to be bad to look bad. It doesn't mean that because my friend Nick says that he's got the ball on a string, that doesn't mean he's primed and ready to win a PGA Tour event, because we're not accustomed to seeing these guys day in and day out. And the margin is so fine. It's not a guarantee. The only reason I say that is he was referring to how much he enjoyed the golf course, how much he loved it, and how calm he was. So I think it's going to be a really good fit for Fitzpatrick this week.
I love getting inside info. Like nothing I love more.
Like, you feel like you know something nobody else does.
Like, Nick's from Winged Foot. Nick's from Winged Foot sounds like what you would say like if you were dialing into sports talk.
First time, long time.
First time, long time. I got some inside info for you boys. $7,000 range. Harris English, Paul Casey at 7,900. Big tier. Goes all the way down to Cam Smith, Brandt Snedeker, Danny Willett, Lee Westwood. I mean, take your pick here. We have a couple of major champions, Jordan Spieth, Sergio Garcia. We've got some young guys, Joaquin Neiman, Cameron Champ. It's a grab bag, Greg. What do you want out of the $7,000 range?
I'm going to start with Louis Oosthuizen.
Ooh.
So I like, there's basically 2 guys that I really like in this range.
Okay.
And one of them is Louis. One of them is Harris English. Harris English kind of fits the Daniel Berger and Xander Schauffele mold, where he's just done everything really well this year.
Yep.
Short game, especially. I mean, he's known, at least I know him for his golf swing, how great it is. But if you look at his numbers, he really gets a lot of his work done with short game and putting, which I think is going to be a big bonus this week. So I do like him. I think Louis really is the guy for a couple of reasons. He does well on hard golf courses. He's done really well at U.S. Opens in the past. He was tied 9th in 2011, tied 2nd in 2015, tied 7th just last year. So a couple of top 10s and a number of top 25s. It's been since 2015. They've been all top 5s, all top 25s rather, in U.S. Opens. And I think it fits him really well. And I think there's some creativity out there that's going to bode well for Louis.
I don't mind that at all. I think there's a reason we see some of the same names continue to contend at major championships. I think it's a different animal. A lot of it is mental as well as physical. I don't mind that one single bit. I am going to use the same logic that I kind of used on Webb to kind of think about a path that he could get there with Brendan Todd. Brendan Todd is the I don't even know how to describe it. 1.0 version of Webb Simpson. Webb's like, we're in V3.5 for Webb Simpson right now. Brendan Todd's in 1.0. He's maybe still beta version of Webb, but does a lot of the similar things, just not as well all over the place. But to me, this tier is more about names that I don't want. I don't want Jordan Spieth. The guy, like, sorry, KP, sorry, freaking first cut, golly. He just sprays it. And, like, I don't know how he's going to find success here. Sergio Garcia, the flat stick is broken. It's terrible. Greg, and this is no offense to you because I think I'm better than him. You would win a putting contest for sure against Sergio Garcia. He's absolutely brutal.
It's been bad. And again, I looked at Sergio and I thought about it, but it's the Hideki effect. These greens are going to get spooky. They're going to get spooky fast. Spooky. Especially if you have some demons with the flat stick. This is not the kind of week where you're going to see somebody who struggles with the putting just pop up and have a great putting week. I don't think. It's hard for me to imagine that happening. You see that stuff kind of happen at a place like Harding Park or a place like where Henrik Stenson won the Open Championship at Royal Troon, where the greens are a little less undulated. You can see that happen more often. But can I make a case for Jordan Spieth?
Ooh, this better be spicy. Yeah, sure.
You know, I've been very critical of Jordan in the past, but there are a couple of things about Winged Foot that I think bode well for him. One, there are 2 shots on the golf course where you could hit it OB, for lack of a better term. 15 has a penalty area on the left-hand side, and number 4 has out of bounds on the right, and it's a long ways away. I mean, you got to hit it way right to hit it OB on number 4. And so I don't think he's going to have penalty shots, which has been something that's plagued him in the past. 2, missing errantly is not going to be that big of a deal. If you're going to missing the fairway is bad. It's not that much worse to miss errantly. It's almost like the difference between missing by 10 yards and missing by 30 yards is not a whole lot. You can get into some of those areas where the cart traffic has been. You can get into some of the areas under the trees where it's a little more bare. And the trees are interesting because they have taken the limbs of the trees and they basically cut them up really high. So it creates these beautiful views across the property where you can see through, because there aren't limbs all the way down to near the ground on the trees. And it also allows you, when you're in the trees, to kind of hit some shots, and you can keep it in play. So if he can draw some lies in those areas, the other thing that may happen is it forces him to miss short on his second shots. And now you get into that area where it's easier to get up and down.
Yeah. Interesting.
When you get out of position, leave it short, and then you're going to be fine. So I think his short game and his putting can save him from the driving that could be really penal. I think the driving is going to be penal for everybody. And in a strange way, since there's no penalty areas, I think it's really it could help Jordan. And I'm not afraid of taking a chance on him this week. He's down in the $7,000 range. I may gamble with him and hope we get another Bethpage Black where he just pops off for a T3.
This is like when, water raises all boats, whatever, is everybody's going to stink with the driver, so it helps the guys who really stink with the driver.
Yeah. Look, that's a hard thing to say because it's going to be important. I just said it's a first shot golf course. But there's an avenue, I'm saying, for Jordan.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, well, you heard it here first. Jordan Spieth has made Greg's short list. I'm sure you'll hear it here second on tomorrow's preview pod when Kyle joins us. $6,000 range, Greg. This is where you really start to get down into some of maybe the European guys, or maybe this is weird. There's a mix of names that are down here that, like Ryan Fox or Brandon Wu, guys that are like Korn Ferry or Euro guys, but also some more established PGA Tour professionals, Max Homa, Joel Damon, Sung Kang, and you have to kind of differentiate between a few of them. Now, quick note here, Sam Horsfield also withdrew, which is another positive COVID test. So Brandon Grace replaced Scotty Scheffler, and friend of producer Jacob, Rory Sabatini, will replace Sam Horsfield in this field. So everyone's very excited about that. Shout out to Sam. Hope you're doing all right. We'll get you back at a U.S. Open soon. But is there anybody down here in the 6K range, Greg, that is super noteworthy for you?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there's a player in this range I like more than a lot of the guys in the 7K range. And I think you said this about the Tour Championship. There's a guy that unlocks all the money.
Yes.
I think Mackenzie Hughes unlocks all the money in this year's U.S. Open. And there's a couple reasons. One, last year, you look at his abilities, where his strengths are, and they're putting, 8th in strokes gained putting, and 6th in strokes gained around the green. So his short game is really, really good. It's fantastic, and he can make some. He can make some hay with that. His putting is really good. But what I like most about him is look at where his high finishes are. The Honda Classic, very difficult golf course. He comes in second. The Travelers Championship is one where he played well. That's kind of the anomaly. The rest of them tied 6th at the Memorial. He's kind of in that 3 under range, 2-3 under range. The BMW Championship at Olympia Fields, he's tied 10th. So when it gets more difficult for Mackenzie Hughes, that short game becomes more valuable because making pars goes a longer way. You don't have to make quite as many birdies. So I think a guy like Mackenzie Hughes has a real chance here. And I like him. I'm telling you, I like him a lot more than a lot of the 7K guys.
I'm always a fan of Big Mac Hughes, so no question or no worries for me there. I think a lot of the ownership will go to Ches Reavie. Great finish last week. He has a couple of really good recent runs at the U.S. Open. He finished 3rd last year. He finished 16th at Shinnecock, which would have been in 2017. So I think he does eat up a lot of it Greg. So, it's fine. He's going to be the popular one.
I'm not against it.
Yeah, I mean, there's guys down here that I think are somewhat interesting. I mean, Jason Kokrak's got 3 straight top 15 finishes. He goes 15th at Wyndham, 13th at the Northern Trust, 6th at BMW. Hits it a long way, Greg. Might have to find a few more fairways than normal to contend around.
This has a funny way, this kind of golf course, of being a confidence crusher, as you may say. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with him. But there's a guy I got to ask you about.
Sure.
2 players, actually. And they'll likely catch your eye if you're looking in this range. Ryan Palmer is a guy who plays tough golf course as well. Great driver of the golf ball. And Sebastian Munoz is another guy playing great who's playing great. What do you make of that?
I'm generally usually a big fan of Ryan Palmer. I think he's always a bit undervalued in situations like this, especially when you get a bit of a deeper field. I think that ever since he made that change at the workday or after the workday when he missed the cut and he kind of changed everything about his game, he's been really good. And then Munoz is a guy that I've been following closely the last couple of his starts because I've had a lot of exposure to him. And it's been weird, right? I mean, he's got 3 really good finishes in a row. He finished 18th at the Northern Trust, 8th at the BMW, and then 8th at the Tour Championship. And remember he had that stretch, I think it was the first round at the Northern Trust. He birdied like his first 7 holes in a row. Like he has that. Now you're not going to see 7 birdies in a round at Winged Foot, but I don't know. He's been playing much better than what I think most people realize his baseline to be.
I like it. I think it's got some good. I think it's a solid take, Rick.
Can I offer you? So we have a handful of like Korn Ferry guys. We've got like Brandon Wu, who won a couple of weeks ago on the Korn Ferry Tour. You got Will Zalatoris, who is probably your odds-on favorite to be PGA Tour Rookie of the Year when he gets his full status. 10 consecutive top 20s for Will on the Korn Ferry Tour. This kind of goes along with our conversation, Greg, of like, if the margin is not that big, if it's not that big from the first guy on the Korn Ferry Tour to the 150th on the PGA Tour, should we be considering some of these really deep values?
You're kind of throwing darts in the dark here, right? So I'm not against taking a chance, but you're going in blind. So I'm not crazy about it. It's a different level. But if you want to take a chance and be a hero, go for it.
Yes. And I think that's exactly what it is. And when you're down in the low 6,000s, like that's kind of what we're talking about here. Anybody else? Anyone else that we would be remiss if we did not talk about for the US Open, the first major championship of the season, choosing my words very carefully. Is there anybody else?
Rick, I think we've covered pretty much. I think we're pretty good. How about you?
I think we should start back at the top and talk through every single golfer in the field.
Go through one by one.
Awesome. All right, Greg, what are you most looking forward to this week? It is going to be, producer Jacob from the top ropes. We did not mention Phil Mickelson. And I think there was a reason we did not mention Phil Mickelson, Greg, and it goes hand in hand with everything we've been talking about. You gotta hit fairways.
Yeah, I think this is a fade. I have a feeling we'll talk a little bit of Phil tomorrow.
Ooh, Phil might come up tomorrow in our preview pod where we'll go through everything. Of course, we'll have the round by rounds, but this is going to be a good one, Greg. I'm absolutely stoked for it.
I can't wait, Rick. I'm looking forward to everything. I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays on TV. I love watching golf courses that I know, so I couldn't be more excited.
Follow Greg on Twitter at TheRealGFD. You can follow me at RickRunGood. This has been The First Cut, and we'll catch you next time.